Hi everyone, this is Famous Dave here, and this is a video lesson focusing on a song by Gilbert O'Sullivan called We Will. It's a beautiful song with a very poignant lyric and a very unusual chord progression. I count 20 different chord names on the chart that I've made, and there are even more variations in the fingerings themselves that we'll be using throughout the song, so it's a fantastic song to work on in order to learn some interesting chord shapes and variations. We'll also take a look at the way the chords stray from the home key of E major into some unusual and unexpected places. I've made another video which features a simple playthrough of me just playing and singing the song, which I link below, and I'll also link to the original Gilbert O'Sullivan version. Now at this point, it's worth mentioning that there's barely any guitar audible in the original song, apart from a few high-voiced chords here and there, some single note slide lines. The bulk of the harmony is provided by Gilbert's piano and an orchestra, which makes for a very lush sounding arrangement, but it means it can be a little bit hard to replicate it exactly on the guitar. So I'm going to claim a little bit of poetic license right now and admit that in one or two places I may have taken some liberties with a chord here or there, purely because I can't always represent accurately the full sound of 10 fingers on a piano plus a load of orchestral parts when all I have is 6 strings. So if you discover anything wrong with my interpretation of these chords, I'd ask you to go easy on me in the comments. Thanks. So let's get to it. The first thing I tend to do when I'm learning a new song is listen to it a couple of times from start to finish to determine its structure. I might take a couple of notes or jot down a few things along the way, but I'm basically listening from start to finish, and this helps me in writing out an efficient chord chart, which can save a lot of time later on. In the case of We Will, I discovered it's basically an AABA form. The A section is a 20 bar section, which is repeated twice in a row. The B section, or the bridge, is an 8 bar section, and then we repeat another A section once more. There's also a short 4 bar introduction at the very start. Now, in my first couple of listens through, I'm not really listening out for specific chords yet, but if anything easy jumps out, I can always jot them down. Once I've figured out the chord structure, I can draw up a blank chord chart and begin figuring out the key and the chords and write them into the chart as I figure out each one in turn. You'll be glad to know that I've done this for all of you already, because a song with 20 different chords can present more than a few difficulties when you're trying to figure it out by ear. So here's my finished chart. The song is in the key of E major, and you can see the various sections marked there. So let's look firstly at the 4 bar intro. This is one of the few places where there's prominent guitar in the mix, and it's playing these really, really high voicings. They're way up here. You've got this E major 9. There's a C sharp minor. There's a C sharp minor over B. There's an unusual A major 7. And an unusual B7. And those are all really awkward to play. So I've moved them down an octave to make them playable with a bass note included. And here are those shapes for the E major 9. So barring at the 2nd fret, or partial bar at the 2nd fret. And then add in the low E string. C sharp minor. Notice how I'm playing this with the open high E string to give a little bit extra resonance. Now I have to be careful when I move down to the B that I don't let the G string ring out, because that sounds horrible. So I need to play C sharp minor 7 over B. Then we get to another odd A major 7 chord. Normally I'd play an A major 7 like this, but we want the clash of the G sharp and the A together, so we have to spread out this very wide voicing. And B7, or B7 with no third, we've got 2nd fret on the A and G strings there. So we're straight in with the unusual voicings. The A section starts with one of the few normal chord shapes, E major. and then moves on to the 6th chord in E, which is C sharp minor, followed by C sharp minor 7 over B, with the pinky down onto the E string 7th fret. Then we move on to the first non-diatonic chord, A sharp minor 7, which I'm playing using my 3rd finger to bar 4 strings on the 6th fret, and 2nd finger down on the low E string here. And then a D sharp 7. This is a C7 shape, moved up by 3 frets. Technically this is a 2-5 in G sharp, so we'd expect G sharp to be the next chord, but you'll see he doesn't actually land there, instead moving to another different key center in the next bar, where we have D sharp half diminished and D sharp diminished in the following bar. I love this change. It's a really nice way of playing a 2-5 in a minor key. D sharp half diminished is the 2 of C sharp minor. We're going to get to that chord in a moment, but we're going to get there via this D sharp diminished chord. Now, D sharp diminished, if you look closely, has 4 of the 5 notes that we find in a G sharp 7 flat 9 chord. Okay, if I leave out the root here, I'm left with a diminished chord here. This is F sharp 7, no, this is F sharp diminished. If I move that down 3 semitones, this is a D sharp diminished, which I'm just repositioning up here. So this is an alternative way of playing a smooth transition between the 2 of C sharp minor, D sharp half diminished, the 5 of C sharp minor, which we're playing as a D sharp diminished chord, and then we land on our C sharp minor. Now, of course, Gilbert isn't happy to just sit on that chord for the next 2 bars, so he introduces a descending chromatic bass line going from C sharp over C, rather C sharp minor over C, C sharp minor 7 over B, and then there's an A sharp in the bass there too. I voice this, if you want to be pedantic about it, I voice this as an F sharp over A sharp, F sharp 7 over A sharp. So we've gone from C sharp minor over C natural, C sharp minor 7 over B, F sharp 7 over A sharp, but we have this chromatic movement in the bass that's leading us down to the next chord, which is A major. Confused yet? Well, hold on tight, because we're only 12 bars in. The descending bass line has brought us down to A major, the 4 chord of E. This is the shape that I'm using for this particular chord here. I'm not playing it like a regular A chord that you normally would, but I'm playing it as this kind of partially open bar chord, if you like. It's the middle 3 notes from that A bar chord, but the A and E strings are open. Now, I'm doing that because I'm going to try to copy this lovely repeating figure that's played by the strings over these couple of bars. Bum, 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 da, 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 da. They happen over the A major 7 to A7 chord progression that you can see in bars 13 and 14. Now, to do that, I'm going to use some hammer-ons and pull-offs and a little bit of unusual string use. So I'm going to start by playing just the open chord, strum through the chord, and I'm going to hammer on to get from this E to F sharp. I need to go E, F sharp, G, F sharp, E, C sharp. But what I'm going to do is hammer on my pinky to the F sharp, then move my first finger to the E string 4th fret. That's G sharp there, so I can go all the while leaving these lower strings ringing out. Now, to get to my E again, I've gone E, F sharp, G, F sharp. The next note I want is an E, but instead of playing it down here on the B string, I'm going to do a pull-off with my first finger. So I'm not actually plucking that string, I'm pulling off from this G sharp note. And it gives you this sort of waterfall effect of all of these strings ringing out against each other. It's a little bit like when you play, for example, this G scale, G major scale, you could play one note at a time. Everything's played legato, there's no overlapping notes, but you could play it like this as well. Just gives you kind of a waterfall effect and notes ringing out against each other with a bit more kind of chiminess in it. It's one of the things that we can do quite effectively on the guitar. So I'm kind of utilizing that technique. I'm going to do the same thing when I move to the A major 7. So all I'm doing is changing from this A major to A major 7 shape, but my pinky is still able to do the hammer on. First finger to hit the G sharp and the pull off. Now I can't do this for the A7 shape. I'm going to put again a partial bar here. I have to pluck each of those notes individually. I haven't figured out a way to do that kind of chiming waterfall technique for that yet. So we go A major 7, A7, and F sharp 7. This is one where I'm using my thumb to come over to grip the low E string at the 7th or the 2nd fret, and I can then leave the high E string open, which gives me the 7 for the F sharp 7. So this is turn the landing lights off, no wait, leave it on. It'll make the night that much easier to be gone. Whew. 16 bars in, and we've loads and loads of chords. Now, we land on this F sharp 7, the dominant 2 of the parent chord E, where the melody notes go easier to be gone, F sharp, E, D sharp, E, D sharp, easier to be gone, which would also fit over a B7 chord, which is the 5 chord in E, easier to be gone. But Gilbert has instead chosen this secondary dominant, and we'll see why in the next bar. Bar 17 features the chord E over B. It's very easy to play. It's a regular E chord, but you just omit this low E string. So the lowest note in the chord becomes this note, which is B natural, 2nd fret on the A string. So the chord sounds like this. Now, how does it relate to the F sharp 7 chord that came before it? Well, it might be a pretty spurious connection, but this is my explanation. F sharp is the 5 of the B major scale. So F sharp 7 resolves to B major. The melody notes at the start of the bar is B natural. So B major seems like a solid choice for the chord in this bar. However, Gilbert instead goes for E over B, retaining the bass note, and the melody note still fits because the melody is B. In the morning. But it gives us a different flavor for the melody, and it's a nice technique to keep in mind for reharmonization. If your melody and chord root are the same, you can try to replace your chord, in this case B, and in the morning, with a major chord a 5th below, but keep the bass note the same. So in this case, we're getting E over B. E, and in the morning, and in the morning. We're moving now on to yet another non-diatonic chord in bar 18, B minor over D. Looks like this. B minor would be the 5 chord in E minor, which is the parallel minor key. And by placing D in the bass, it gives us some bass line movement from the previous bar, which already had B in the bass. We've gone from an E over B, so we had B in the bass. And now we've moved the bass note up to a D. The melody note also goes up to a D natural just before the start of this bar, anticipating a change to something outside of our home key. The chord that follows that is C sharp minor. Plain old C sharp minor, the 6th chord in E major. Now you sometimes see a progression from the 1 chord, E in this case, down to the 6 by adding in a dominant 1. So you could go E, E7, which has a D in it, then C sharp minor. E, E7 over D, C sharp minor. But B minor shares 2 notes with E7. In both chords, we have the notes B and D. And the melody of the 1 of the bar, in bar 18, is B. Gilbert is actually singing B. So, why not alter the flavor of the harmony a bit by changing E7 over D to B minor over D. Bit of extra flavor, a bit of extra texture, and that's why he's done that. Now, the next 2 bars are straightforward enough. We have C sharp minor to C sharp minor 7 over B, which we've seen before. I'll often play the first C sharp minor as a C sharp minor 7 with my pinky off there, just because it makes the move down to B in the bass a little bit easier. But I'm lazy and you're probably not, so stick to the written version if you prefer. We're on to the last 4 bars of the A section now. You might call this the chorus. It's where the children's choir come in and sing the song title, or in my version of the song, it's where I sing "We will" in a lovely falsetto. The first 2 bars of this are nice and easy. E major chord, but there's a French horn that plays a little motif that I try to replicate. It actually goes like this. So I play the first part of that, which gives us the E add 9 chord in bar 22. This is how I do it. I'm going to use my little finger to move from the F sharp to the open E string. And then the last 2 bars of that section sounds to me like a B sus to B7 progression, but I find that a little bit clunky on the guitar. I'm not crazy about the way it sounds. So instead what I do is I play it like this, similar to how we played the F sharp 7 chord a little bit earlier on. I'm going to put my thumb on the low E string at the 7th fret and leave the B string or the high E string open. So if I'm careful about the way I pluck through those notes, I can still get sort of that. Now, I don't exactly replicate the horn part there, but it's similar to. So it sounds quite pretty. Again, it's a little liberty that I'm taking, but I hope you'll let me away with it. Right. That's it for the A section. Let's move on now to the B section, or the bridge. The first bar of this was really hard to figure out. The bass line is very indistinct, and often the bass line is the note that you kind of hang on to first when you're figuring out a chord. If you can find what the bass note is, it'll give you a big clue as to what the overall chord might be. But in this case, I can't really hear what's going on at the beginning of the first bar in the B section. It definitely lands on the A in the second half of the bar, which makes me pretty certain that it's not on A in the first half. I just can't hear exactly where it is. So the melody climbs up to E natural. It's not easy pretending. On the 1 of that bar, it's not easy. And the orchestra seems to be implying a C sharp minor chord, so I went with that, but I'm using this non-standard fingering. Normally we might play C sharp minor as a bar chord like this. I decided to play it as a C sharp minor 7, like this. because it moves nicely to the A major 7 in the next part of the bar. It's not easy pretending. I think that just gives it quite a pretty kind of movement. Bar 2 of the bridge has the half diminished to diminished D sharp we've seen already. And it again moves back to the C sharp minor, but we quickly move through the circle of fifths to land back on the E in bar 4, moving from C sharp minor, F sharp minor, B7, E. So technically speaking there, we've got a 6, 2, 5, 1 in E. Or if you want to count the D sharp diminished as a G sharp 7 flat 9, then in fact what we've got is a 3, 6, 2, 5, 1, which is clear that Gilbert has been studying his jazz lead sheets. Now, bar 4 also has a nice little string line, which I replicate by playing this little E sus4 fill. The strings go, suffer the afflictions within. Ba, 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 ba. So a little hammer on there with the pinky to get an E sus4. Bars 5 and 6 of the bridge have some pretty standard chords. The bass line moves diatonically from G sharp through A, then E over B, up to C sharp. Again, he swaps out what would have been a rather obvious B major chord there and replaces it with the E over B in bar 5. We've seen that one used previously. Again, this works well because the melody note is B natural in that bar where he plays the E over B. It's no use in an ending to proclaim from the start. So that note, to proclaim, is B, which fits over E over B, to proclaim from the start. We're nearly there now. Bar 7 of the bridge is another secondary dominant chord, F sharp 7, but with the A sharp in the bass. It's fretted like so. A sharp there on the first fret of the A string. Note the open high E string, which gives us the 7th of this chord, and it resolves to a B sus, then B7. So we've more movement in fifths here from C sharp minor to F sharp to B, and eventually back to E, which is the first chord in the A section that's about to happen in after the B section finishes. In this B sus to B7 bar, I'm going to use the same sort of B major add 4, or I don't quite know what you might call that chord, but it's this with the thumb gripping the low E string here and the open E. Gives you a nice kind of chimey waterfall sort of effect. It sounds a bit nicer to my ears than B sus to B7. It's a bit clunky to do it that way. That's the best we have really on guitar. You might do something like that. Not terribly easy to play. This one though gives you just a little bit of a guitar sort of flourish. So I'm using it there and you can't stop me. Now, that's pretty much it. After the bridge, we play the A section once more with a slight ral or slowing down in the last few bars. The very final chord, the C section, is just this strummed and held E add 9 chord. It's fingered like this. Pinky is playing an F sharp here, which is the 9th note in our E chord. It sounds to me like the actual final chord is a straightforward E major. But again, I really like this chord. I think it works well in this kind of situation when it's allowed to ring out and then fade away. So that is the final liberty I'm taking with this song. So there we have it. Loads and loads going on under the hood of this gorgeous song. We have key changes, we have secondary dominance, we have chromatic descending bass lines, we've root movement in fifths, we have chord substitution, and we have it all in under 4 minutes. Now, one of the things I love about this song is despite its harmonic complexity. It's not about that. It doesn't beat you over the head with all these unusual chords and say, look at me, look how clever I am. Instead, it just delivers a gorgeous melody and a gorgeous lyric and a really, really nice orchestral arrangement first and foremost. And it's only when you really dig into it, as we've done here, that you discover the level of complexity that's actually going on underneath that melody. It takes a songwriter of considerable skill to pull off something like that. Burt Bacharach and Hal David and ABBA are two others who spring to mind, but Gilbert has lots of other examples in his catalogue too. So, bust this song out at a party sometime. Impress your musician friends with your chord vocabulary, impress your normal friends with a lovely song they might not have heard before, and impress your granny with a song she hasn't heard in years. Have fun practicing. We'll see you next time.